Hey, what's up guys and gals? My name is Rick9G. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about I Love Lucy and the rarely shown I Love Lucy episode, and we'll look at the possible reasons why it was not shown regularly in syndication or reruns. And I have my own theory, and I think my own theory is pretty much right over the other supposed theories that we have out there. I'll talk all about it and what is going on. So let's get right to it. If you're a fan of I Love Lucy, you probably believe that you've seen most episodes, and that's probably true. And I believe that as well until I started to get the physical copies of every single episode. And then I really noticed that many of them aren't shown. I wouldn't say many, but some of them aren't shown. One of them was this one. It was the 103rd episode of I Love Lucy, Ricky's Movie Offer. We have Frank Nelson in it, and we have Elizabeth Patterson as Mrs. Trumbull, and many others. Why did they begin the Hollywood story? Well, we know that the Hollywood story, where they go to Hollywood, they have all those episodes with Harpo Marx, John Wayne. It's one of the most popular stories in I Love Lucy. I would say it's the best story. And the reason they thought that up is because the writers were trying to freshen up the show from being in the New York apartment so much. They knew that taking the Ricardos and Mertzes to California, that is in the story, it would bring a lot of new plot points, and they could get a bunch of famous people to star or guest star in the episodes. Those are the first essential collaborations that we have on TV, and they were great to see. Frank Nelson's character in this episode was named Ben Benjamin. And you may think, okay, that's such a ridiculous name. Why couldn't they have come up with a better name, essentially Benjamin? Well, this was a real name. It was the real name of Madeline Pugh Davis and Bob Carroll's agent. So if you thought that the name was pretty crazy and makes no sense, well, it really did exist. This episode is the first in the storyline where the Ricardos and Mertzes head to Hollywood. Before this, there's really no mention of them going to Hollywood. Yeah, aspirations here and there, but nothing solid. And this is where we have a talent scout played by Frank Nelson who comes to the apartment. Ethel mistakenly thinks he's a robber or someone who's trying to get into the house, and so she freaks out. She even convinces Lucy that this is the truth until they realize that this is a talent scout. They accidentally knock him out before that, and the guy is pretty much unconscious for a good amount of time. Now, that in itself is kind of risque, just knocking someone unconscious and kind of bringing them back. It's pretty crazy to do that, right? They're trying to not promote violence. It's one of the rare occurrences that happen. But continuing on, as Frank Nelson is on the couch and they're trying to get him to look back to normal and essentially comb his hair, put his clothes back together, hiding all the evidence that they hit him over the head, Ethel does something very interesting. She takes out a comb that this Frank Nelson character, the talent scout, has and starts combing his hair in a very particular way, kind of parts it to one side, and then has the idea of holding the comb like a mustache. Now, we know what that looks like, especially this is the 1950s, old Schickergruber himself. Now, that is risque. That is my reason why I believe that this episode's not shown, because even for I Love Lucy, that was pretty brisk. I mean, that was pretty risque. And you know that today, a lot of networks probably don't want to show that, or at least it didn't show up in the 80s and 90s when I used to watch the show, and even in the 2000s. I pretty much found this out in 2015 when I started looking at the physical copies. Now, it could be argued that this episode is kind of a two-parter with the next one, 104, Ricky Screen Test, in which he does that. He does a screen test dressed as an old type of Don Juan with Lucy, and Lucy's trying to upstage him, and he ties her in the back of the bench so that her face could not be shown. Now, going back to episode 103, why do they not show that one a lot according to other sources? Well, they said because it was a more expensive episode to produce than the typical one, and it deviated from the show's established format. Now, to me, that doesn't make any sense. Just because an episode is more expensive doesn't mean that is expensive to produce. That doesn't mean that they can't show it, right? That has nothing to do with why they don't show it on reruns. Now, here's another strange reason that I really don't buy. It says Desilu, the production company owned by Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz, they retain the rights to the reruns of I Love Lucy. That is fact. However, here's the opinionated part. They had the power to choose which episodes were rerun, and they generally favored episodes that were more cost effective and in line with the show's established formula. Now, partially I think that's true because actually Lucille Ball didn't like the Christmas episode to be shown. That's why it wasn't shown pretty much forever until essentially the 2000s. And the reason was because they didn't want that rerun to play during July. They thought people wouldn't want to see a Christmas episode in July. Of course, that was very wrong. But because this was essentially a two-parter, an unofficial two-parter, the idea was that, okay, we would have to show the next one after, and maybe it won't make sense if we show it. It was more expensive to produce, and so we just won't show it in reruns. I'm not buying either of those reasons. To me, it's with that scene with old Schicklgruber of the 1940s. I mean, the scandalous thing, you can even see Frank Nelson kind of smile under the comb and so forth. It's a very funny scene to me because there's a lot of mimicry. They're trying to comb his hair. They're trying to get him to sit back, although he's unconscious, trying to have him sit upright. It's pretty comical, but it's a shame. It's a shame that they don't show it because it is funny, and it's a bit of censoring that they're doing to not let this episode run normally. Now, my question to you is, have you seen this episode? And if you remember when, have you seen it recently? Of course, Pluto TV probably plays it all the time now, and I regularly watch Pluto TV. Actually, I haven't really seen it much on Pluto TV recently, but let me know if you have seen it and where did you see it? Did you see it back in the 50s when it first aired? Maybe in the 80s, in the 90s? But most likely my guesses are that you haven't seen it because they don't really want to play that episode. Should they censor episodes like this or not play them as much? Or should they just play everything and not cut anything out? Let me know in the comments below. We'll see you all next time. Don't forget to stay positive, always better yourself, and most importantly, be hopeful. Thank you so much to my platinum and diamond tier patrons, especially David D, Jerry D, Daniel B, Citizen Kane 359, Vito L, Sally N, Russ C, and Beatrice R. If you want to be on this list, make sure to check the links in the description. It's a great way to support the channel. Thank you.